Jon Tatooles.
Thank you. Glenn, thank you very much. This is a great day. I was in Wisconsin on Wednesday night, and I left and traveled from the cold of Madison, Wisconsin, to the pouring rain of LA, which was the first time I'd experienced that much rain in such a long period. And it was quite nice. It's wonderful to be out here, and the CAS event is a great opportunity for us to get in, back out here and see our customers and do set visits and such. And very pleased to show you what we've got available for you. So first, a show of hands here. Who is familiar with our 6 series recorders and have used them? So a fair number of you folks are familiar with these products. For many of you, you may be aware of Sound Devices, and our heritage started out in production mixers. One of our first kind of milestone products in the market was the 442. And we introduced that in 2000, so it's been 15 years since we introduced that product. And the company's about 18 years old. And if you look at the current products in the market, our 688, they look a whole lot like that 15-year-old product in many ways. And a lot of the things we introduced on a 442, for instance, just as many outputs as inputs, those were things back in 15 years ago were quite unusual. And those were born out of conversations with you all when we learned that it wasn't just about having many, many inputs. It was also, I'm feeding this, I'm feeding an IFB, I might feed a second camera, I might feed a third camera, I might feed an IFB. So all of these inputs we synthesized, and our products are in evolution and have been continuing to evolve. So the current 6 series line, which is kind of our core bag mixer recorder environment, and interestingly enough, if you think of a high performance field mixer today, the definition of that is no longer just a mixer. Essentially, these tools, whether it's from Sound Devices or other manufacturers, all these tools now have integrated recorders. The technology has gotten to the point where recorders can be integrated with almost no penalty in terms of size, in terms of power draw. And so a modern high-performance field mixer is going to have a recorder, and in the case of the 688, quite a powerful recorder. So this system here, we kind of call the 6 series system here. There's 4 components to it that are core, actually 5. First is the 633. And if I was on a desert island, I guess I wouldn't really need a field mixer, but if I was on a desert island and I needed a field mixer, I would take the 633 with me, because this is a tool that is quite complete. And if you look at the history of field mixers, this has encompassed in its feature set just about everything you would need. And for many years, our 302, which is an analog mixer, was one of our better selling units. And this essentially is everything that little 302 has, with the full multi-track recorder built into it. So this tool, with its 6 inputs, there's 3 microline selectable inputs and 3 line-only inputs, records to SD card and compact flash cards, and has a full master clock timecode circuitry built into it. This is a product that encompasses a wide range of bag applications, and many of our customers have this and use this as kind of their core piece. But what we see is that, for that 85% of the applications, this may be sufficient for me, but it's really the reason why a professional is hired is because they can handle those extra special jobs. They have the tools and the knowledge to do things that are deeper. And a great example, I've been investigating virtual reality production, which is its own weird little specialty, and it's not becoming weird anymore. It might have been weird 16 months ago, and now we're hearing a lot of discussion about it, and we're seeing that just as reality-style production and the development of high-performance wireless systems allowed us to do multi-track in a field very effectively, VR is even driving that even more, because every element on a set that's generating any kind of sound needs its own ISO recording, so that those can be built back into this VR environment in post. There may be a camera microphone that is getting positional information, but that's really a guide microphone. And these mono elements are placed in post-production within these gaming engines. And it's a remarkable tool, and it's facilitating and requiring more and more tracks. I like to tell the story, and I know Jeff's heard this. We used to say from one track when we had this mono Nagra to 2-track DAT was, oh, we're in multi-track world. Well, now we're in an environment where in some productions, you'll need a tool like the 970, which has 64 tracks of audio. Not all productions are going to require that. There are some productions that do need that. The big competition reality style environments are needing those very high track counts. But even drama, it's not uncommon to have 12 tracks of isolated tracks on a drama application. And so the 688, which is the product that is the companion piece to the SL6, it's kind of fun to see the CAS having nominated the SL6, which is an accessory for the 688, which is the tool that enables it. But the 688 is the core piece, and what this is a very powerful multi-track audio mixer first. So it's got a tremendous amount of mixing capabilities with 12 analog inputs. The first and the sixth input, because those XLRs are either in the full back or the front, can be selected to AS3 or AS42 for for those digital microphones or digital sources. And those inputs are all available to be recorded. And so you can activate individual inputs to record those. And you can record again to the same SD card and compact flash slots like you can on all 3 of these pieces here. So the 688 differs from the 664 in that its architecture is a complete digital input, digital architecture. So essentially the signal comes into the mixer and it's converted to a digital signal right at that preamplifier. So after the mic pre, it's turned into a digital signal, and then all the routing and mixing is done all within DSP. That's a little bit different than the 664, which is physically identical to it in terms of size. That is more of an analog mixer with a digital companion to it. So the 664 is more like our legacy 442 architecture, whereas the 688 is a full digital implementation. It gives us a couple of additional capabilities. One is we can delay all the inputs and have individual input delay. We can delay output buses. This is especially important in applications where we're syncing with video. I did a job, every now and then I mix some projects. I mixed a project where the audio chain was fully separate from the video chain. You're typically dialing about 160 milliseconds of delay from cameras and such. This was on a live stream production. And it's quite simple to dial that in right at the output bus. So those kinds of capabilities are important when we're interconnecting and working in different environments. So the 688 with its digital architecture also allowed us to add a serial digital header onto it. So if you remove this chassis here, the SL6, there's a little header connector. And that's a serial digital connection. And the SL6 attaches to that. And all powering and control is derived from the 688. And what the SL6 allows is the availability of 3 slot receivers. Now, there's been a history of slot receivers, and there's first called Unislot, and Panasonic and Ikegami came up with this spec. And several different manufacturers, including Electrosonics, which with their SR right here, are slot-based receivers. Sound devices, we said, this is a nice physical connection. It's a multi-pin connection, and there's a bunch of pins that are not being used. So why don't we base a specification on that Unislot, expand onto it, add all these digital pins, and add essentially serial digital control. So we came up with this spec, and we call it SuperSlot. And SuperSlot is backward compatible, so all of our legacy or older Unislot devices can connect right into here. But newer devices like the SR, I think this is an SRC and the WYSICOM and the new Audio Limited, which is also super slot, the 1010, these now can take advantage of this connection, and now from the mixer itself, I can control the receivers. And these devices have perfectly good user interfaces. You can get into the buttons, but oftentimes it's much faster. We can take advantage of the bigger display on the 688 in order to get in and can change frequencies. We can essentially present all of the core features of these wireless receivers directly onto the 688. As we continue to work with the wireless manufacturers, we're continuing to introduce tools that they already have on their devices and present them onto our screen. So you'll see more and more features coming over that super slot in the future from all the different manufacturers. And presently, the manufacturers that are doing super slot receivers, Electrosonics, WYSICOM, Sennheiser, and Audio Limited. So they're all licensees of super slot. The SL6 chassis is a nice tool because in a bag, what this now allows you to do is have your 2-channel receivers, and now with this you can have 3 2-channel receivers. So you can have 6 inputs coming in here, connected to the SL6, and that's bolted onto the 688 with a couple of screws and a header connection. And now there's no additional interconnection required. So all audio, all power, and all control is all integrated over that digital header, that header connection. So I don't have a mess of cables in a bag, so it's quite tidy. Additionally, the power, you can put a large NP-style battery in here, and that powers the mixer as well. So you've got a single environment for your wireless receivers and for your mixer in the bag. Many years ago, I recall one of my first NABs, and I went to NAB in 1992. So I've been to a few NABs. And Sennheiser actually had a mixer that had integrated wireless in it. And I think at the time it was about $20,000. And I talked to Tobias from Sennheiser. He said they sold 3 of those. So it was a product that was ahead of its time, more expensive than its time. But essentially with the SL6, this allows you to use your wireless system that makes most sense for you and integrate this environment into a nice, tidy little bag package. A couple of other tools on the SL6. There's antenna distribution, so you can put your whips on, or you can put external powered antennas. There's bias available on here, and you can go in and select the bandwidth. There's a RF filter within here, so you can do some filtering for the RF. So you've got the RF distribution, so you're right from the SMA headers here, you can present your antennas in the bag. So 2 antennas in your bag system is really set, so it really simplifies the interconnection. There's also a few DC connections, so if you've got additional devices in your bag, you can access this. Any questions on the SL6?
Yeah. I have one. You mentioned that you have a number of licensees.
Yeah.
Wireless manufacturers. I'm just curious as to how you're handling that. Are you trying to increase that number, or are you trying to keep it minimal?
No, we're certainly, it's a no-cost license for a manufacturer. So there's, no barrier of entry. We're not trying to.
And it's an open standard that you make public.
Yeah, and the specification is on it, and is public, and what pins and the serial commands.
So
and all
you
that.
encourage anybody to.
Very inclusive. You're trying to get more acceptance.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it's in our best interest to make the SL6 more accessible and make that standard for any future product that we may do more available to the market.
Does Sony have a slot that's not compatible with anything?
Sony slot is a different pinout, and they are very interested in being a super slot licensee, although they recognize they have a little bit more challenge because it's not just software. They've got some hardware issues to do.
You don't run cable. I guess it's routing in the software where you tell each radio which.
Correct. Yeah, there's a few interesting things on the super slot specification. We can accept up to a 4-channel receiver. So in the future, if there are 4-channel devices, the super slot specification can handle that. Also, it can connect to 2-channel transmitters. So if in the future wireless manufacturers have transmitter devices that are in the super slot specification, the spec is extensible and can grow to that. Exactly, all the interconnection is done here. The receivers can be interconnected over AES, so some receivers already have AES digital outs. Some have analog. The SL6 has A to D converters inside of it, so that's where you're doing your A to D conversion, and that's a serial digital connection going back into the 688's DSP process.
But for a receiver that has AES out, can it go directly AES?
It'll go directly AES.
Okay.
Yeah. So there'll be no SLC.
Yes. So is there in development an SL12 to utilize all 12 inputs?
You know, we've got customers who are interested in having a chassis companion to the 633, rack-mounted chassis. So there's interest in that, and we're exploring to see what direction we go. So I wouldn't be surprised to, we're certainly built this spec and think it's extensible and makes sense for other applications.
John,
Yes.
is the SL6 compatible with the 664?
It's not.
Okay.
One of the things that I mentioned on the 688 is its digital architecture, and the 664, its analog inputs come in, all mixing and routing is done in analog. So
It's really, as you said before, it's really like a 442 connected to a digital recorder.
right now, in practice, the two units feel very similar, but in terms from the user perspective, but from the architecture, they're very different, and the 664 architecture doesn't support the SL6.
Sorry, my last
Yes.
question. So, maybe not one last one. I have a few, but so if it's all digital and your other units are analog to digital conversion, are the preamps the same in all these models?
Yeah, so the preamps on board here are the same architecture as the preamps in the 688.
Can you daisy chain two SL6s?
You can't. No. So the SL6 is designed as a single unit. Now the SL6 is occupying a spot where we have an accessory fader controller that is available for the 664 called the CL6. And what that gives you is 6 additional rotary faders. And on the 688, that accessory fader can only be positioned on the bottom side, whereas on a 664, it can be, there's a header connection on the top and the bottom. But these header connections are different and unique than the header connection on the SL6. So that leads me to another tool, which is the CL12. And when we came out with this, the 688, we knew that this may be something that people were asking for. In fact, when we introduced the 688, the engineers put the hooks in there, but we honestly did not know going to market that we were going to be developing this product. And so we came back from NAB last year, which is in April, and said, yeah, all right, we have to do this. So this product took us from April to November to accomplish. But essentially what the CL12 is a tool that's presenting the same controls that are already available within the mixer into dedicated buttons and knobs. And if you look at it and you say, it's essentially an expensive mouse for my computer. And if you go to a dubbing theater and you sit in front of that gigantic console is essentially a big mouse for a big Pro Tools session. So it's not unlike this in our current environment, where the control and how I interface that control becomes very important. And just having lots of controls, it's a nice thing to do, and I can accomplish that in the bag. But if I have the luxury of having a cart, I can now attach my CL12 to my 688, and as of, I think it was this week, you can now attach it to your 664 and your 633. So I'm not quite certain why a customer would marry this product with that, but if they happen to have a 633, they may
I plugged mine in. How did you accomplish that with the 664 architecture?
Well, we clever engineers always do
And
things.
what about the EQ that the CL12
Right.
has? That's not available?
That's not available. So the CL12 has the maximum compatibility with the 688. So this product was really designed around the 688, and most of the other tools on board kind of can be they're usable on the 664, but its maximum compatibility is with the 688. And essentially what this is allows you to have fader level control of your 12 inputs right on nice big 100mm faders. There's two versions of the CL12, and back at that dinner after NAB when me and Paul Isaacs and Matt Anderson were sitting around and we talked about this. We said, oh, what kind of should we put premium faders in this? Should we put decent faders? And we said, no one's gonna want to pay the premium for very high performance faders. So let's have a more cost-effective product. And then somebody said, well, let's do both and just see where it goes. And raise your hand. There's two models of this product. They are functionally identical. The only two differences, really there's one difference. One has P&G faders and the other has standard faders. They're about $1,000 different. The more expensive one has nice wood panels and all that good stuff. Raise your hand if you think we sell more of the lower cost version. Curiously enough, we sell more of the more expensive one, and the reason is this, and it makes a lot of sense. If you're a customer that needs this kind of control, odds are you're sitting in front of this for hours and hours, 5-day weeks, 6-day weeks, and there's a certain tactile advantage to these beautiful P&G faders that makes a lot of sense. So sometimes the most logical thing when you think about it from an engineering perspective, some people, there's a certain art to that people just want to have. Yes.
Is it true you also supply the standard black panels
Yes.
for the improved model for
Right.
those people who want to keep it on the DL?
Yeah. So the P&G version, we call it the Alaya, and it came out of the name of, I guess, custom-made surfboards. It's kind of a cool name.
It's wine.
It's wine, yes. And so this is the standard side panel, which is anodized aluminum. And you see that there's some metallizing here, so for RF. And the standard panels come in addition to the cool wood panels. And there's two different colors of wood if you really want to bling it out. So it's kind of fun.
Which color wood sells?
That's a good question. I believe it's this one. We also have a blonde one.
Blonde would sell better?
Yeah, I think the darker one. So
Absolute Sound will write an article about which one sounds better.
which one sounds better? Now the funny thing is, we're now in 2015, and these are all digital devices. Back in the days of P&G faders, audio was running through the faders. There is no audio running through these faders. This is no audio here. These are sending voltages to the processor to say this is what the gain is. But many of the tools, and there's shortcuts to get to a lot of the features that are built into the 688. A couple of things, and one feature in particular that I'm seeing more and more discussion about and use of, in an application that the same project that I was on, is automatic mixing. And as we get more and more unscripted dialogue, or we're going to be doing a live stream for something, or we're in this other environment where we have the luxury of doing ISO recordings because we have all these wonderful tracks, but we also need to deliver a great mix. And there's times when we want to take advantage of modern tools to get a better mix. I did a project 3 weeks ago for Google at the White House, and I used automatic mixing, and I also used the Cedar DNS8. So I threw as much technology as I could, because I was using Google's budget to do it. And but automatic mixing, absolutely saved me and gave me an additional 3 dB of signal to noise, and that's significant in a highly reverberant space. The Cedar gave me another 2-ish or so, couple extra dB, and when you're talking, about a live event with the president, that gives you an advantage.
Is that the Mix Assist that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So what the tool that we have is called Mix Assist, and Mix Assist is available in the setup menu. There's a shortcut button on the CLA, and what it essentially does is two things. One is it listens to each individual microphone, and it's listening for its background level, and that background level is kind of the base level audio signal level of that individual input channel. You can adjust what that threshold is by changing the gain of the microphone. So you are making a threshold decision by where a gain of a microphone is. So there's some automatic mixers that have a separate threshold control. You're effectively doing this on every automatic mixer, including Dugan's gain sharing tool, by selecting your gain. The other tool of Mix Assist is what's called the max bus. What's that? So that's max bus, and then there's max bus is looking across all the inputs, and it's looking at the waveform of one particular talker or signal, and it's comparing that amplitude to other channels. And if the amplitude of that signal is higher on this particular channel here, that microphone will open and the others will remain unopened. And with those two tools, you get the advantage of turning a microphone on when somebody speaks. Now, Mix Assist is designed for speech-like signals. It's not designed for any music environments. It's looking at the speech bandpass and speech percussive type of sounds. So this is an algorithm that we developed, for speech that we based on, Dugan's gain sharing. We based on Scher's and Telemix. We based on Electrosonics has a patent as well on automatic mixing. So we kind of looked at all these different tools and synthesized our own. The other element, especially in a live event, is a tool called Last Mic Lock-On, which keeps the last remaining microphone open, because if all of a sudden that noise floor goes away, that's dramatic. You want to keep a microphone open. Yeah, not in a good way. So it's not a gate. It is and it's called Mix Assist. You can go in and you can take any individual channel out of Mix Assist. So you might have somebody I don't want their microphone ever muted. We'll remove them from Mix Assist. The nice thing about this is you can generate your mix, your rough mix with Mix Assist, but you can still record all your ISOs pre-fade. So if in post they want to recreate everything in absence of Mix Assist, you can deliver that. So that's a powerful tool on the 688. Now again, the digital architecture on the 688 enabled us to put Mix Assist on the 688. Our 788 also has Mix Assist. The 633, we've had some requests for customers wanting Mix Assist, and that the architecture can actually support it. It's more similar to the 688 than it is the 664. So that's something that we're evaluating. Any questions on that? Yes.
Does that only affect the post-fade, the mix, right? On Mix
Yes. Right. The other tools we have here, some of you are familiar with. These look identical, but these are two very different products. The top one is a Pix 270, and the bottom one here is a 970. And we introduced some video recorders in 2011, our Pix 240, and it was a camera-mounted video recorder. And I'll say the video world is its own world altogether. And anybody here, raise your hand if you do video. Few enough of you here that I can actually say this. I had a producer friend of mine say that I can train a sound mixer to frame and set up a camera shot quite easily, because their technical knowledge of the abstractness of sound allows them to kind of understand how that picture environment works. It doesn't go the other way around. To teach somebody who's a shooter how to set up audio and set up a gain structure is very different, because they're thinking with a different part of their brain than us audio engineers are. And now with our feet in both camps, different worlds kind of synthesized together. But again, with these two products here, we've got one for the video folks, and it records HD video to 2 drives that are, we call them the caddies. These have 2.5-inch solid-state drives. But when we introduced this rack-mounted product, we had a lot of customers start putting it into their sound racks. And we had the Pix 260, which is this video recorder designed for the video folks and for the broadcasters, put in, carts. And so we said, maybe there's a product that makes sense for just the sound folks. And so that's what the 970 is. So this has no video circuitry on board, and it is up to 64 tracks of recording onto up to 4 drives. And it doesn't have 64 channels of analog I/O. It's got 8 channels of analog I/O and 8 channels of AS. And you get up to 64 channels with Dante. Anybody here familiar with Dante? For those who aren't, Dante is audio over Ethernet, and it's a remarkable specification, and it works. I used to work for Shure, and I ran their mixer and signal processing group for many years, and those were the early days of audio over Ethernet, and none of those specs really were mature enough. There was CobraNet, there were all these other environments, but it wasn't until about 5 years ago, when Audinate, which is the developer of the spec, came up with Dante, and it's audio over Ethernet. And it can support bidirectional, 64 channels of audio, 128, and it's a very robust environment, and it allows a single Ethernet connection to give you all of your I/O between devices. And so a cart with a 970 and a mixer that has Dante on board can be a very small, compact environment with lots of I/O. And we've got numerous customers running the 970.
So yes. unlike the 688 and other companies' recorders, the 970 has no mix engine.
Correct.
It's just
the 970 is just a recorder only. So it doesn't. There's no summing. It's essentially what goes in gets recorded, written to file, and when you play back, it's playing that back onto its own tracks. So these are the tools that we're presenting here. We're very pleased to be nominated for the CAS Award on the SL6. It's quite an honor. I believe the 970 was the Technical Achievement winner last year, and we're very pleased and humbled by it. So I'll be here if you have any questions. But any questions for everybody else? Kind of public questions?
I just want to point something out there.
Yeah. You
mentioned the with the CL12, it's fully capable with the 688, and less so with the 644 and 633.
Yes.
On the Sound Devices website is a nice table that shows easily at a glance what's available, what's not on the different machines. I think Fabi's printing them out right now. So
that went up right after the announcement of support for the other machines. I didn't see that. Is it?
It just came out last week.
It came out when the firmware did it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Days ago.
So we'll have that put out in just a few minutes. So
I was curious real fast on the mix assist and such like that. If it would work across your auxiliaries, maybe like your X1 or your AS or anything like that.
Meaning submixes?
Yeah, there's submixes.
Yeah, it's on those left-right outs, so it's
the main left and right bus.
Yeah, right. They're certainly something to consider.
So if it's post fades would not be affected by that.
Well, your fades are controlling level. So yes, you are changing the relationship of mix assist when you're changing fader levels.
Right, but I mean it's not about buses. So if you have post buses as opposed to pre buses with those wide.
Yes. Yeah.
Any other questions for John?
Yeah. So the CL12 is with. I know there's a 970 Dante. Is it? Is the CL12 Dante enabled independently?
The CL12 is solely a controller. There's no audio that goes over the CL12 except for a headphone out, which you can loop through the unit. But other than that, there's no I/O on the CL12. So all the intelligence and the control is actually happening in the mixer.
Hardware user interface.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to point out. I'm sorry if you already did, but the fixed machines, the 270 and the 970 here, can work in tandem, and anything that you enter into one as far as metadata, track names, and so on and so forth, appears on the second machine. Originally, when they first came out, it wasn't fully compatible that way. But as of several months ago,
yep.
the latest revision allows it to happen seamlessly. Mm-hmm. So you can have two machines running at the same time for redundancy or backup, etc. But only enter the input control onto one machine.
What's the connection between the two? Is it like USB for the metadata, or?
The connection between two 970s would be Ethernet.
Okay.
So these would be connected over an Ethernet network. And they'll self-discover if there's only two devices and they're the only devices on the network.
Just put them both on the same network.
Yeah.
You can also do file transfer over FTP.
Oh, cool.
Over Ethernet.
But with the 688 and the 664, there's no redundancy of copy files, right? Other than within itself.
Within itself, yes. So the two recording medium, the SD card and the CF. Correct. Yeah.
What about redundancy in the 970? Can you record like 16 and 16 on the same thing, or I guess there's multiple cards, right?
The recording medium for these are removable solid-state drives.
Okay.
So this is a solid-state drive and a caddy here, and we've seen some devices that are just cycling 2.5-inch drives, but the edge connector on a 2.5 drive is not designed to be multiple cycles. It's designed for about 80 cycles, and they will wear out. And so this, when it's attached to, there's some very high-speed data over that. When it's attached to the caddy, this gives you, FireWire 800, which at the time that sounded like a good idea. But USB 3 and eSATA, which is the actual interface to the unit. So
his question was whether you can treat multiple drives as redundant, like a RAID,
yes, right. You can record the same material to multiple drives. So you can have your local, you can have a deliverable.
What about different formats, like polywave on one, mono on the other?
It does not support that, so that'll be selected globally for all of those. The 688, 64, and 633 allow you to have mono on one card and poly on another, a couple of different designs. Or MP3. Yeah.
Okay. So we do have those printouts now on the table here.
Thank you very much. Well, that would be different hardware because there's no Dante.
Okay. Thanks very much, John.